Get ready, because the full moon on June 10th leaves no space for masks. It's like a spotlight cutting through a darkened theater. What comes into view are not the roles we play, but our real faces. Everything built on compromise, silence, or convenient versions of ourselves will start to crack. This is a full moon in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius has no tolerance for illusion, no matter how beautifully it's packaged. In this sign, truth isn't a concept, it's fire. And fire either purifies or burns. It's within this fire that outdated paths begin to dissolve. Fate starts seeking new directions, and it does so without warning. Life may suddenly veer away from the scenarios that once felt stable, not because you did something wrong, but because your frequency no longer aligns with your former circumstances. This full moon directly opposes the sun in Gemini. And in that tension, every word ever spoken without feeling, every truth avoided, begins to sound hollow. Words lose their power when they're not rooted in truth. At the same time, something rare is unfolding in the sky. An occultation of Antares, one of the most powerful stars in the night sky. The moon will pass over this star, whose energy is known to dissolve illusions and expose hidden layers. This isn't about mysticism, it's about revelation, about the unseen becoming visible and no longer allowing us to pretend. In moments like this, analysis fails. Logic doesn't help. Anything in your life that no longer resonates with your inner truth, relationships, plans, identities, will begin to fall away. Not because you decided so, but because you were chosen. Some will experience this as a sudden loss of direction, others as emotional overwhelm or plans collapsing without explanation. But this is not chaos. It is a shift in your destiny line. And destiny doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in resonance. Why now? Why this full moon? What makes it so precise and irreversible? I'll speak more about that soon. But for now, remember this. The energy is already in motion. It's flowing through your decisions, your feelings, your words, clearly distinguishing what is still alive from what is burned out long ago. You cannot stop it, but you can recognize it. And if you do, your true path will begin. And once it does, there is no turning back. The full moon in Sagittarius is not just a lunar phase, it's a torch, raised not to the sky, but deep into the corridors of consciousness. It doesn't light the road ahead, it lights you. And while on ordinary days you might retreat into logic, hide behind thoughts, or activate familiar reactions, none of that works now. The light is too direct. It hits the heart, the center, the places within you that you've long avoided. Sagittarius is the sign of truth, but not the kind found in books. Not intellectual theory. This is the kind of truth that steals your breath. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. It bursts in and never leaves. It's the kind of truth you can't turn away from, because deep down you know, if you look away, you'll lose yourself. This full moon doesn't wait for you to get ready. It doesn't offer a choice between yes and no. It simply erases everything that no longer matches your inner frequency. And if you've been wearing a mask, no matter how noble the role, it will fall away. Not because someone exposed you, but because the light switched on. And it's the kind of light that makes it impossible to stay silent, to agree to what's no longer right, to carry what's already expired. It's the kind of light that refuses to let you keep living a life that doesn't belong to you. The truth in the air becomes so dense, it shifts the atmosphere itself. The energetic climate changes. The air thickens. Eyes become more direct. Words sharpen. People start saying what they've held back for years. Or, just as often, fall silent, realizing that everything they've said up until now came from the wrong place. And this isn't fear. It's the release of long-held tension, stored through years of inner uncertainty. In moments like these, it becomes unmistakably clear. Who around you speaks from habit, and who speaks from soul? Who lives truthfully, and who lives by script? Who's ready to step forward, and who's still clinging to a safer, outdated version of themselves? And you don't need psychic vision to see it. Because truth starts ringing louder than any words. Intuition sharpens to the edge. What once felt blurry bursts into clarity. It's as if the lines between events form a pattern. And in that pattern, one message stands out. Where you've been lying to yourself. Where you've been settling for less. Where you're still walking a path that no longer serves you, just because it's familiar. The full moon in Sagittarius doesn't shame. It doesn't punish. It simply raises the bar and says, you can't keep doing this anymore. Not because someone said so, but because something inside you no longer agrees. This is the moment where you either shed the old skin or lose your momentum. No compromises. No, later. Everything that no longer aligns falls away. And here, in the quiet after the fire, a brutally honest truth is born. The full moon doesn't ask who you want to become. It shows you who you can no longer be. This is not a sentence. It's an invitation to step out of the version of yourself you've already outgrown, out of the role that's gone hollow, out of the identity held together only by the fear of change. And if, in that moment, you fall silent, put aside the explanations and simply feel, you will hear what you've long ignored, maybe for years, maybe for a lifetime. But this light, the one you can't turn away from, this is where movement begins. Not the outer kind, but the real kind, the inner one. And everything that follows won't come from desire. It will come from honesty. And honesty isn't born in words. It rises in the ruins of inner constructs, in the raw encounter with what you no longer want to see, but can no longer hide. This is where the energy of Antares begins its work. The star that doesn't guide your way. It burns away everything that is no longer true. This star is ancient, like the memory of the universe itself. It's called the heart of the scorpion, and not without reason. Antares holds the power of transformation, but not the gentle kind. Its transformation is radical, irreversible. There's no playfulness in its vibration, only revelation, only a truth that can no longer be resisted. But on the night of the full moon, everything intensifies. Because it is the full moon that amplifies the gravity of events. It doesn't just illuminate, it renders things irreversible. And when the moon, at the peak of its power, occludes Antares, a mechanism is activated, one that cannot be undone. This is not simply a moment. It is a portal through which everything inauthentic begins to dissolve. When the moon passes over Antares, the space around us becomes transparent, like an X-ray. But when it covers the star, as it does now, illusions don't just thin, they vanish. This is called an occultation, a moment when Antares' light disappears, not because truth is lost, but because its core arrives. Stripped of glow, of shape, too pure to miss, too silent to deny. This isn't just a rare astronomical event. It's a rare state of consciousness, when truth enters uninvited. And it is the full moon that gives this truth enough force to manifest, not as a whisper, but as a complete, unedited picture. No filters, no armor. This kind of shift doesn't begin with conversations or dramatic decisions. It happens far deeper, in that quiet place inside where we tell ourselves why we live the way we live, where we justify old choices, drag around feelings that lost their warmth long ago, repeat roles we no longer believe in. And this is where the silence arrives, not to explain, but to show. This path ends here. This mask can no longer hold. This desire was never truly yours. The occultation of Antares feels like the vanishing of a center around which your entire reality once revolved. And when that center dims, everything it once magnetized begins to loosen. Old patterns, some of which you never even noticed, may suddenly lose their grip. Not with noise, not with pain, just a quiet vanishing of interest, of meaning, of the energy required to hold on to something that no longer aligns. You might wake up one morning and realize you no longer care what others think. Or notice that a conversation you once dreaded now feels easy and clear. Or perhaps a clean and piercing clarity will emerge. Not about what to do, but about what you can finally let go of. That's how this moment works. It doesn't break you. It demagnetizes you. Some relationships may begin to fade, not from conflict, but from a loss of relevance. Ideas you've clung to for years might suddenly feel weightless, unnecessary, not because someone told you enough, but because you no longer feel the pull. This full moon in Sagittarius passing over Antares doesn't erase memory. It erases the lies you've gotten used to living with. And this is not a tragedy. This is liberation, not from people, but from personas that no longer hold life, from stories in which you no longer recognize yourself. Usually, such inner turning points arrive after a shock or loss, but not now. Now, the universe operates like a surgeon without pain. It takes nothing from you. It simply shows you what has already stopped living. And in that silence, the clearest realization begins to take shape. Sometimes truth doesn't scream. It simply erases your desire to continue the old way. This is not a time for making decisions. It is a time for recognition, for recognizing who you are no longer. And if you allow that recognition to arise, you'll feel a space open inside, without effort, without a fight. Simply because the old can no longer reach you. And this is the true gift of the moon as it crosses Antares under the full moon's light. You stop pretending to be what you're not. And for the first time, you make room for what's real to enter your life. It is precisely in this silent vanishing of old masks that space is freed. And wherever space opens, something new always arrives. But what arrives isn't always recognizable at first. It doesn't enter loudly. It quietly shifts your entire trajectory, subtly, but irreversibly. That's how a new path begins. Not because you chose change, but because the line of destiny has already moved. When such a shift is set in motion, the outer world may look the same. The people are still there. The streets are familiar. The goals seem unchanged. But the feeling is different. As if something within you has been gently turned toward a direction where there's no map, no instructions, and no real reason to keep walking the old road. What once made sense now feels artificial. What was once held together by effort can no longer hold. This isn't a crisis. It's a loss of resonance. Reality refuses to keep playing by the old rules, and you, even if you try, can no longer return to them because you're no longer vibrating on the same frequency. It's like speaking a language no one around you understands anymore, including you. You may notice it in the smallest ways. A plan unexpectedly falls through. Someone you relied on suddenly disappears. An idea that once inspired you now feels lifeless. It might look like failure. It might feel like breakdown, but it's not. It's a course correction that has nothing to do with your will. It simply means one part of your life has completed its purpose, and now something else is in motion. What makes these moments so unique is that they don't come with explanations. They come as sensations in your body, in the tone of your reactions, in your fading interest in things that once held your attention. Sometimes it feels like a deep inner stillness. Other times, like an unfamiliar anxiety with no clear cause. That's because the reason isn't in the event. It's in the shift of the current, and you can feel it even when you can't yet explain it. This isn't a loss. It's the universe refusing to energize what no longer feels true. And within that refusal, there is immense wisdom, so that you don't keep clinging to something that's already left you, so that you don't poison yourself with expectations that no longer align with the future. Sometimes it feels like life has taken something from you. But the truth is different. Life simply stopped feeding what you've outgrown. And in this moment, the most important thing isn't to resist, but to recognize everything that's collapsing now is doing so for a reason. It's clearing the way. You haven't been abandoned. You've been recalibrated so that you can walk in the direction where your energy finally speaks in its full voice. And this is what real protection from destiny looks like. Not keeping you safe from pain, but guiding you to the place where you no longer betray yourself. Remember the question that opened everything. Why now? Why this full moon? What makes it so precise, so irreversible? Because everything aligned. Not just the astrological coordinates, the moon in Sagittarius, the opposition to the sun, the disappearance of Antares. More importantly, timing and readiness aligned. A longing to live differently met a moment in time when the universe was finally ready to support it. This is no longer just an astrological event. It's an inner recognition, a full moon that aligns with your personal truth. And from this point forward, a shift begins, one you can't control, but can hear. What should you do on days like this? Above all, do not create noise, not inside, not outside. Don't try to explain everything. Don't rush to sort it out, to make it logical, to talk it through. Words lose their power in moments like this, because the truth hasn't yet been spoken. It's still forming. And any premature conclusion will only distort what's true. Instead of analysis, observe. Observe yourself, your sensations, what lights up, and what quietly fades. There's no need to decide anything in haste. What's needed is slowness, to hear where the energy is pulsing. Energy always leads, but only if we don't drown it out with thought. Sometimes it might feel like emptiness, a kind of inner stillness where nothing seems to be happening. But in reality, it's a pause that reorients your direction. The key is, don't fill it with other people's voices. Don't rush to figure out what to do. Because right now, action isn't the priority. What matters is your willingness to remain in this turning point without knowing where it leads. Intention without pressure. That's the key. Don't create tasks. Simply name a direction. Ask yourself, what am I no longer willing to live with? What has stopped being mine? Then, release the question. The answer won't come as a thought. It will come as a shift in your inner focus, as an unexpected no, or a quiet, unmistakable yes. If you feel that resonance, that sense of inner matching, the path has already been activated, even if you still don't know where it's leading. This feeling can't be forced. It simply is. Like an inner anchor you can finally trust and no longer fall out of. Because alignment with yourself is the path. And it's the path that life itself begins to support. On days like this, it's not answers that appear, but stability. You no longer need to convince yourself. You stop arguing with your own truth. Clarity comes not from analysis, but from letting go of what no longer holds. And if, in some quiet moment, you feel a silent shift, that there's nothing left to explain, that your breath has changed, and somehow everything feels lighter, then the turning has already happened. All that's left is to trust the route you didn't choose, but which chose you. Because that's exactly how real turning points begin. When everything falls apart, don't look for meaning. Look for alignment. That is your new beginning. Not all change begins with a conscious choice. Some changes begin with the exhaustion of pretending. Destiny doesn't explain itself. It simply shifts the rhythm. Subtly, almost imperceptibly. But once it does, there's no going back. And if you're beginning to feel that the old no longer holds, it's because it truly has ended. And in that space, something new is already beginning to emerge. This full moon in Sagittarius burns through anything that stands in the way of being honest with yourself. It has no tolerance for compromise. And if, during these days, you find yourself speaking less and feeling more, if you're planning less and sensing more, you're already tuning into a different frequency. The kind of frequency where there's no need to fight for a place, where only one thing matters: alignment with your true self. The roles where you've made yourself convenient no longer fit. The connections where you stayed silent no longer hold. The goals that no longer carry your heart won't come alive again. What loses power isn't lost, it's released. Don't fear the stillness. This isn't emptiness. It's the quiet of inner restructuring. And if you allow yourself to trust it, energy will lead you, unforced, to where you've long been meant to be. The choice has already been made, not by logic, but by vibration. The one who has felt the inner shift is already on the way. The one who clings to the old will remain on an empty frequency. Sometimes the most important turning points don't come when we're ready. They come when it's no longer possible to keep living out of alignment. And that is when the real beginning begins.